All right, for this drawing activity, you are going to need your ebony pencil, an eraser. It could be a cap eraser or just like when you have like a big one, and probably your pencil sharpener because at some point you're gonna wanna, sharpen that ebony. So the first 4 boxes across the top is where we're gonna start. The first one, I'm asking you to shade with the tip of the pencil. And really these first couple boxes are to show you the difference of how you hold your pencil and what kind of difference it makes when you're shading. The next one I'm asking you to shade with the side of your pencil. So when I shaded with the tip of my pencil, the lines were very obvious. It looks kind of scribbly. And when I shade with the side of my ebony pencil, which is a lot wider and more broad, I'm able to shade an area a little bit faster. I'm also able to shade it without that kind of liney look, which might be what you want in an area. All right, the next box, I'm asking you to use the side of the pencil and then blend it out with a blending stump, a blending tool. I forgot you also need this, you should have this. So when you're holding your blending tool or your blending stump, you're holding it kind of like this. You can also hold it like a pencil, but I think that's kind of for like a smaller area. When you wanna cover a big area, you really wanna hit it from the side. So it's hitting this part right here. This is essentially just rolled up compressed paper. If you're pushing on the tip of it, this part is gonna start to wear down and you're just gonna ruin it essentially. So you really wanna hit it from the side here. And I'm going in a circular motion. I'm pressing gently. I'm not like, pressing really hard into the paper. And it's gonna give this kind of softened look to the value that you just put in that box. All right, the next one is asking you to use the side to shade, blend, and then it's asking you to erase. So take your eraser, kind of draw a couple lines in there. You could see that you'll get like a really crisp eraser mark. So if you have an area that you accidentally shade over or you want to pop out a little highlight or something, you could do that with your eraser. All right, this next box is asking you to fill the area with a solid value using the swirly technique and a blending tool. So what the swirly technique is you're using the side of your ebony pencil, and instead of going in a straight line, I want you, there's something underneath my paper, making a mark there. I want you to kind of like switch up the way you're shading. So kind of going in a circular motion, going back and forth, kind of crisscrossing over things. This keeps your shading from being really liney, from being really textured. It's gonna really ensure that you have a solid, even fill in an area that you want. So that looks pretty solid, but I'm also going back over it with my blending tool. And then I'm also using that kind of like swirly technique with the blending tool. That way I get a really nice even fill in my box. I can't see any lines, can't see any pencil marks. That's what we want. All right, these 2 triangles right here, I want you to experiment with how hard do you have to press before you can't erase it. Ebony pencil is softer than a lead normal pencil that you would be using. It's a little bit darker. So while it is still a pencil and while you still can't erase it, there does come a point where, you've gone a little bit too far. So how hard do you need to press before it doesn't come off cleanly anymore. And I would say that this is not fully erased in my book. I can still see those pencil lines happening right there. So, I mean, I don't have to press all that hard till I can't go back anymore. And then this next one is how lightly can you draw or shade with the ebony? So I'm holding my pencil back a little bit further. That way I'm not pressing as hard. If I'm pressing or if I'm drawing like this, like I would hold a pencil, there's a lot of weight in my hand that's being like pushed down into the tip of the pencil. If you hold it back a little bit, you can shade a lot lighter or draw a lot lighter because you're not, you know, putting that pressure on the tip. So, I mean, I don't even know if the camera's picking it up, but it's barely there. All right, how lightly can you shade with the blending tool? So there's gonna come a time where you need to fill an area, and no matter how lightly you're trying to press with the ebony, you're like, man, it's still just too dark. Like the ebony is just like, it's ruining it. So what you can do is you can actually add value with your blending tool. So right now, this blending tool has been used for a while. You can see that there is ebony left on the ends of it. So that's what we're gonna use. I can kind of do a little tester spot here. It's not all that dark. So I'm gonna come back in here, and there's actually just kind of like a perfect amount on my blending tool. Let's say there wasn't any on my blending tool. I can come over into an area and pick some up and transfer it into what I want to shade. You know, I could even like add a little bit over here that's a little bit darker, come over, pick it up, and then drop it into what I want to shade. And this is going to allow you to get really light. If you're like, oh my God, it's making it way too dark on my box, all you have to do is clean it off. Just find an area like in the margins and draw with it a little bit, and it'll start to clean it off. It's never gonna come fully clean, but it'll get the excess off. All right, down below here, we have a value scale. So it's going from 5 to 1, black to white. So this is pretty self-explanatory here in the area, move that over a little bit, in the area where it's the darkest, I am pressing the hardest, going back over this, making sure my value is solid. It's never gonna be like black. I mean, you don't need to press so hard that you're gonna bust through the paper. It is only ebony pencil, so a dark gray is kind of where it's gonna end, but as dark as it'll go. So in the dark gray, I'm starting to press a bit lighter here. So it's one step up. And then I'm getting into my middle grays. So I'm starting to press a bit lighter as well. And notice where I'm holding my pencil again. It's at the back. It's always easier to add more value to an area than it is to take away. So if I'm like, that might be a little bit too light, I can always go over it again. Now I'm one step lighter for middle gray. And I'm really pressing at this point just about as light as my ebony will go. So, but I still have light gray in here before I get to white. So we just talked about how you can put a little bit of ebony on here. I'm gonna go just one lighter. Now looking at this, I think that these two are a little bit too close in value. I think that they're too similar. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make this one just a little bit darker so it's different from two. But now looking at this, I'm like, ooh, these two are kind of similar. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make this one just a little bit darker. And then I guess I could probably make four a little bit darker. So now they're all different, going up the value scale. All right, this next box is essentially the same thing. It's a value scale, but this time, instead of having these lines between the values starting and stopping, I want you to blend the whole way down the value scale. So what I'm gonna do to start is I'm gonna still start at 5. And this value scale is the same size as this one, so I can kind of see like where this line would be right here, moving into 4. At that point, around that area, I'm gonna start to lighten up. And you can see my ebony, I'm moving in this kind of swirly way that I did up at the top right here. I'm not just going up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm kind of moving in this circular motion. So I want to let up my pressure a little bit. And now I'm getting into my middle grays, so it's really starting to lessen up here. And as I move toward my light gray, I'm gonna kind of fade it out because I know that in 2, I used my blending tool, so I'm probably gonna have to do that as well. But this time, I'm gonna start at the bottom and kind of pick up some ebony on my blending tool. And at the same time, I'm gonna really nicely fade out what I just shaded in here, so that when I go from 3 to 2, there's still a little bit on my blending tool, and then I'm gonna go from 2 right into 1. So I have this nice soft transition. So looking back at this, I definitely went outside the lines. So I'm gonna take my eraser, start to get in the habit of cleaning up your edges there, and that looks pretty nice. All right, on this little strip of ribbon here, I've kind of like numbered it. Like if you've ever seen a color by number, it's telling you where to put the numbers, or where to put the colors based on the numbers. So it's the same value scale that's happening right here. So 1 is white, 2 is light gray, 3 is a medium gray, 4 is a dark gray, and then I don't think I have anywhere, no, I don't have any 5s on here, so we're not really taking it super, super dark anywhere. But since this is a piece of ribbon, you know, we're not gonna have like a line in between 2 and 1. It's gonna be more like this value scale is down here, really soft transitions between your values. So that's what we wanna aim for here. So going from 2 to 1 to 2 in this first little section here, 2 to 1 to 2. I didn't even use my ebony on 2. I used a blending tool. So that's where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna pick up some value over here. And it's really light gray. And I'm gonna let it fade out into my 1. And then I'm gonna go back into my 2 here, and I'm gonna really gently, man, I had pencil, I drew that stupid circle over it. That was dumb of me. I'm gonna let it transition into 1. So really soft, 2, 1, 2. Now going down this way, I'm going to 4, 3, 4. So 4, 3, 4. 3, like, I mean, anywhere between that middle gray right there. So definitely need my pencil. 4 is pretty dark. So 4, 3, I was still using my ebony at that point, but pressing a lot lighter. And then when I get back to 4, gonna press a little bit darker. So still doing my swirly kind of shading here. And since this is such a smooth, you know, like piece of ribbon that we're trying to shade here, I'm gonna go back with my blending tool. Honestly, looking at that, I think 4s could be a little bit darker. This kind of looks too similar throughout. So I'm gonna go back, and I'm pressing pretty lightly. I'm not like going really hard over 4. And I'm just gonna darken up those 2 spots. There we go, that's a little bit more contrast in there. Okay. The next one, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So jumping from 3 to 2 to 1 goes pretty quick. So 3, and then I get into 2. So I'm gonna switch to my blending tool. 1, I'm gonna fade it out into white, and then it's gonna jump back into 2. So I'm gonna transition that back in. So I've got a little mark on my paper. Then I'm gonna work from the other side in. So to go from 4 into 3. And this looks like so liney right now, so I'm gonna go back over it the other direction, get my circular motion going, really trying to not have any lines in there. And then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna blend that out. There we go. And you can see there's no big stopping like lines between my values. There's not like a line where I've jumped from one to the next. It does not look like this top value scale here. All right, so you can keep going through the rest of this ribbon. It goes 2, 1, 3, 2, 3, 4, so it gets, you know, kind of medium lightish gray to white, back to dark. 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 4, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, very light at the end. And then on the next slide in this presentation, you'll see what this finished ribbon looks like. So if you're like, ooh, I'm confused about where to put what value, having a hard time reading these numbers, whatever, you could look at that and you can, you know, kind of check yourself. All right, down in this next area here, we're doing the same thing that we did popping in the values with the numbers up on this little piece of ribbon here, but now we're doing it with an actual form. So a cylinder, a cone, and then a sphere. So just like in the last one, 5 correlates with 5 on your value scale that you previously made. So it's really dark right here. Then 4 is getting a little bit lighter. 3, 2, and 1. So I've basically just created a value scale, but instead of putting it in a strip, I've curved it and I put it on this little cylinder here. And then the shadow, the cast shadow here, is a 5. Pretend that I colored that in just for the sake of time here. So my light source is coming from this left-hand side here. That's why 1 is so light. And then my shadow side is over here at 5, and then the cast shadow down here on the table is also dark. So same concept here when it comes to the cone. As I work my way over the value scale across the cone, I'm getting lighter and lighter. And then the same thing happens with the sphere as well. So down below is kind of the same thing we did here, like chunked up value scale, smooth value scale. Chunked up value scale, smooth value scale. So the same places that you put your values up here, you're gonna put them down here, but now I don't have these division lines for you. So you need to determine where they go, and instead of making those harsh jumps from one value to the next, your goal is gonna be to try to lighten it up as you go across that form. So it's really dark on the right hand side, and you want to make this nice smooth transition over to the left. And I have made a mess of my outline, so I'm going to go back to clean it up here. And then 5 get shaded nice and dark for that cast shadow. So same thing with the cylinder and with the sphere. Again, The bottom section of this is also on the next slide, so you can check your work. Make sure that you are taking a photo of this paper and that you're turning it into the assignment that's on Classroom, so that we can look at it. This is 10 points. It's 10 points of did you complete it, but also does it look correct? I mean, this is very specific in what it should look like. This is very specific as to what it should look like. It's numbered for you, very specific values. We're also really looking for blending out the values, smooth transitions down here in these three, in this value scale, and within the ribbon. So take your time, go back and watch this video as many times as you need. You know, pause it if you need a second, if I went a little bit too fast for you. That way you can work through it at your own pace.